I've been saying all day, say it with me, everybody. It's okay to say, I like Nick Foles, but he did not play very well yesterday. And for me, that's why the Eagles are packing their bags today.
Well, I think it's fair to say he did not have one of his better games, especially if you compare it to the playoffs, say, last season when he got hot in the NFC Championship game and then the Super Bowl. Very good early. That throw to Jordan Matthews was as good as it gets. And then I think the team as a whole kind of took a step back with that Brandon Brooks injury. I thought that was devastating. I thought in many ways that changed the game. And as a whole, just some of the injuries. Fletcher Cox was able to get back in and out in the second half, but he clearly was not himself, even though he continued to dominate, wasn't out there as much as he would be. Rasul Douglas, who would have thought we'd be talking about losing him would be such a big thing in the first half. He was able to come back. But then, today was clean out day at the NovaCare complex, and it was just amazing. 3 different guys, Brandon Brooks, Nigel Bradham, all wearing walking boots. I mean, it was a physical, devastating game. And the Eagles really, I think when you look back, it was just the attrition got to them. And in-game injuries really affected this team.
Yeah, we'll go down them in a minute. And look, Foles early, the 14 points, he made a couple of big plays. But after that, don't you think he left some plays out there?
Yeah, he was not nearly as accurate in the second half. I think you do have to give the Saints some credit, who realized did a better job, especially their front when Brooks leaves and Wisniewski enters the game. And then remember, even later, Jason Peters is forced to leave. And then you have Halapoulivaati Vaitai in the game. But look, if you're being honest, if you would have told me before this game that the Eagles were going to hold the New Orleans Saints to 20 points, I would have told you they're winning that football game. So the offense did not produce nearly as much as they should have.
Oh, I have no problem with that. In fact, I just, been getting into it with the listeners out there. Schwartz's name comes up. A lot of people saying he needs to blitz more, blah, blah, blah. I said, what do you want him to win? Did you anticipate that the Eagles were going to win that game 14-13 or something? I mean, to give up 20, yeah, was he flawless? No, but come on, to give up 20 to the Saints in their own building, he should have a statue out front.
Well, you know how I feel about that. I've struggled with the fans and their mentality towards this defense and Jim Schwartz. And again, yesterday you have Josh Hawkins having to play a large role.
He's another guy I never knew was on I never heard of him.
Exactly, and I have to play him. He came on. The practice squad. He was signed, I believe, on December 11th. Then he was elevated to the roster on Christmas Eve when they waived Devontae Bosby and Chandon Sullivan. So he's another guy. You don't want him out there, but they were forced to play him first because Douglas gets hurt, and then later because Maddox gets banged up. And, hey, Drew Brees, give the other side some credit as well. Drew Brees realizes Hawkins is on the field, and as soon as Avonte Maddox goes down, boom, he finds Hawkins. You got Michael Thomas, 3rd and 16 conversion. And again, a lot of maybe non-veteran quarterbacks don't realize those matchups. Drew Brees is going to figure out who's on the field.
No question. John, a lot of people looked at the interception that Foles throws up 14-0 as kind of the momentum shifter in that game. When did you feel like, this might change?
Well, I think the clear momentum shifter was the fake punt for 2 reasons. One, it was 14-0 at the time, 4th and 1 at their own 30. I think it showed the desperation of Sean Payton. I think he realized that game was slipping away from him. So to go with that, and then Fletcher Cox gets injured on that particular play. trying to stop Taysom Hill going up the middle. So I think in many, many ways, that shifted the momentum of the game back to the Saints. They ultimately went down and scored on that drive, converting the 4th and 2 at the goal line for the touchdown. I think that was the turning point of the game. But you can certainly point to the interception. That's part of what we've lauded Nick Foles for, though, is those 50-50 balls that have worked so much. That one didn't work. It was a little underthrown, but maybe you can also put some on Zach Ertz, who isn't Alshon Jeffrey, and maybe he could have made a better attempt at being a defensive back on that particular play, so to speak, in at least trying to knock the ball down. And then a strip sack from Brandon Graham. If the Eagles come up with that, they could potentially go up 3 scores and the game is probably over. So I look at all 3 of those plays.
Where do you stand, John? Where do you stand on the fake punt in terms of some people suggested that they should have accepted the penalty? I don't know that I've ever seen that.
Way.
I don't know that I've ever seen a coach accept a penalty when a 4th down is the option in their own territory.
Yeah, in their own territory at their own 30, and Drew Brees is the quarterback who understand can convert a 3rd and 11. Especially when you have a Michael Thomas, and converted 4 3rd and longs on the same game. Doug did the exact right thing. You make it 4th down. You force them to punt deep in their own territory. That's not even, to me, that's not even something to argue over. It showed the desperation, as I said, of Sean Payton. If that's a regular season game, for instance, he just punts the ball and you never even think about it again. It's a no-brainer decision. And you give Sean Payton a lot of credit for making the right call, but by no means should Doug Peterson have accepted that penalty.
Did you sense a fake?
No, I didn't sense a fake beforehand. Remember, this is not. Maybe if it's the Los Angeles Rams, who are known for faking punts because Johnny Hekker is so good at it. Maybe you think that. And by the way, the Eagles had Fletcher Cox in the game. Well, Fletcher Cox isn't in the game if they think they're going to punt it. So they were playing for it as well, at least having the defense out there. And back to one of those, sometimes you got to tip your cap to the opponent. They're playing as well. They're playing too to win the game, and the Saints made a good play.
John McMullen's with us here. The long drive, what was it, 12 plays, 13, however many plays it ends up being?
It's like 18 plays.
Okay. What people suggest he should have blitzed, he should have sent guys, he should have shown something different. What difference would you have liked? Because I know you and me kind of think the same way. If you blitz Breeze, you're going to get blitzed. He did try to throw blitzes at Breeze, and it didn't work.
The strange thing to me, Mike, about this whole blitz conversation is the Eagles have been so bad at it. Every time, really the entire season, it's been a theme dating back to early in the season. Week 2, Deshaun Jackson, blitz. The Tennessee game that everybody points to in overtime, that was a 0 blitz on the game-winning play. The big 75, whatever it was, 80-yard game in the loss to Minnesota that Adam Thielen had was on a blitz. The Eagles have not been successful blitzing, and yet everybody wants them to blitz. And, yeah, I don't think this team is equipped to blitz. I don't think they blitz well. I don't think they have players to accomplish it. And when you're facing a quarterback like Drew Brees, and remember, I just mentioned Rasul Douglas. I put Avonte Maddox in this category. Their improvement has been dramatic throughout the season. Cre'Von LeBlanc as well, who had a great game. But we also have to be realistic. These are not cornerbacks who can hold up in press coverage when you're blitzing a lot. So, I mean, part of the reason they have improved, and they've improved this defense, is because Jim Schwartz has put them in good positions. and played a lot of zone defense and enabled them to get better. If you put them on islands and say, we're going to zero blitz all the time, they're going to get killed.
Yeah. I don't have I mean, I get it. Can I show it once in a blue moon? Maybe. But this blitzaholic thought is going to get the team. Well, by the way, statistically speaking, they blitzed more the first time in New Orleans than any game this year. They gave up 48.
Yeah, and Jim we brought that up to Jim last week, and he didn't agree with that because some people, to be honest, don't know when a blitz is a blitz. He says he blitzed the most in the Jacksonville game, and a large part of that had to do, that was a game in London because of the surface, and it was really bad surface, and he didn't feel his pass rushers could get their footing to get a decent pass rush, so that's why he blitzed a little bit more. But as a whole, look, nobody's going to lie to you and say he blitzes a lot. He blitzes less than just about every other defensive coordinator in this league. But there's a reason for it, and there was a reason for it this year, and it's because of all the injuries in the secondary. Yeah. And I think it's a common sense reason.
How much?
I really do.
How much did Brooks going out change the game?
Oh, tremendously. I mean, the Eagles were dominating that football game early. It came out, I believe, on the 15th play. So they were already up 14-0. And they were running the football at least somewhat effectively. From the moment Brooks left, they could not run at all. And maybe it would have trended that way even with Brooks because, well, look, I talk about this a lot. This Eagles team, the one clear weakness is at running back. There's just not a lot of talent there. And they went back to Wendell Smallwood again. And it's kind of amazing you're in the divisional round with Wendell Smallwood as your lead runner. And they did default to Darren Sproles, but that's a position that they need an overhaul at, and they need to add talent, and they need to add significant talent, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any way around it. That Brooks injury was devastating from the Eagles' perspective, and it was one of those things that changed the game.
Your take on them snapping the ball before the 2-minute warning? What are they trying to accomplish there?
Well, I don't have a problem. I mean, the play was there. I mean, the guy was wide open. You are trying to move the football. You get the play off. Mm-hmm. It was a good pass, and it wasn't executed. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens in this game. And that's why we always talk about small margin of errors. You know, when you have that, and when you're in a one-score game, one play like that, let's be honest, Alshon Jeffrey is going to catch 99 out of 100 times. It can go the other way, and it killed the Eagles' season. But I don't think you look at that and say it was because they were hurrying up. I mean, that was an easy play, and it wasn't executed properly, and I think you leave it at that.
Yeah, I kind of figure they were just trying to catch the Saints kind of napping or off guard there, like the Saints thinking, they're going to let it run down. No, we're not. We're going to try to sneak this in here. My only question would be, why am I hustling to try to score to give the ball back to the Saints?
Well, I don't think it was necessarily that as much as the first thing that you said. Perhaps they're trying to catch him off guard. What they did was you never know what happens if he catches the football. It's probably going to end up to be 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 3 if the Saints rally up and tackle, but maybe they're not prepared. Maybe they're hurrying. Maybe they miss a tackle and you have a first down and you have another set of downs. So you can look at it from both perspectives. I just don't think the error was because they were hurrying. I think, if anything, you probably point to the fact that Alshon Jeffrey's playing with cracked ribs more than anything else that had an impact, and than he was hurrying or anything of that nature, if that's what people are trying to say.
Right. All right. So a lot in that game, 20-14, couple plays left out there. The Saints look sloppy moving on, but the Eagles lose, and now they've got a lot of the offseason. Not too many teams, John, take the Patriots out of this thing, sustain a competitive roster to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Going into next year, they will now be going into the second season removed from that. So now the real challenge starts for Howie is how do you sustain this? His first order of business is going to be this quarterback situation. How do you foresee this going?
Well, Carson Wentz is the Eagles' starting quarterback, and that was made blatantly obvious today, clean-out day. Carson talked to us for the first time since, I think, December 9th. So it's sort of like everything is back, rebooted, face of the franchise, Carson Wentz. Now, how do you maximize? Can you maximize what you get for Nick Foles? Can you franchise him with the salary cap difficulties that possesses, or do you just let him walk via free agency with the mutual option between the two teams? Then you probably get back a supplemental pick in next year's draft, in the 2020 draft, which could be a third round depending what you do in free agency. So to me, the only question is, how do the Eagles handle Nick Foles' exit from the organization? But Nick has made it clear that he wants to lead a football team, that he wants to be a starter in this league, and that's not going to be in Philadelphia.
I said yesterday, John, it felt like when the NBA figured out Linsanity. Like Jeremy Lin had this 2-week stretch. I get it. Foles was a little longer, but it just felt like for 2 weeks, Lin, everything went his way. For Foles, everything was – in fact, Lutz missing that field goal. At that point, you're thinking, they're going to win this game. This is unbelievable. I mean, they get the 5-yard loss. They get the 5-yard loss on the play before. You're thinking, how do you lose 5 yards on that play?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that, I said the same thing. And then remember, after the missed field goal, you have the good field position to start the drive. You're down 6. Foles immediately hits Zach Ertz, I think was a 16-yard gain on a good pass. And then you get the roughing the passer call, and you're already in scoring position. So, yeah, it was shaping up as this is happening again. They're going to win this game 21-20.
Yep.
They're going to go to the NFC Championship game. And then that's how – but, again, at some point your luck is going to run out. If you're playing these games, and it was in Chicago with the 4th and 2, and Golden Tate doesn't even know the play, and it works out for you, and then you get Trevon Hester if he happens to cut his fingernails that day, maybe doesn't tip Cody Parkey's ball, and the double doink never happens. When you're playing with those razor-thin margins, eventually the ball's not going to bounce your way, and that's what happened. It goes right through Alshon Jeffrey's hands, who has the best hands on this team, no question. He would be the lead. If that's Nelson Aguilar, maybe you believe it. If it's Jordan Matthews, maybe you believe it. Goes right through the hands of Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And it went the other way.
That's what I said. It was like the end of Linsanity. When the NBA finally figured out Jeremy Lin, it was like, we got you. And it was like Foles yesterday. There were some throws. I said it looked like he had the T-shirt cannon at a Sixers game, and he was just launching it as high up in the air because he's like, well, this usually works. Let me try this. And it was not working.
Yeah, so many of those have worked for him.
So many have.
And part of it is when you do throw it up like that, you do have to give the quarterback credit who is throwing it to a spot. And sometimes the defender isn't there and the receiver can get there. And, hey, you have to give Nick Foles credit. He played well throughout this run, and obviously last year's run even more so in the playoffs. But I think you saw some of the limitations, and you saw some of the reasons why the Eagles behind the scenes have never wavered and have always said that Carson Wentz is the number one quarterback of this team, and he's going to be moving forward. In some ways, and I just wrote about this on 973ESPN.com, in some ways this eases the complications for the Eagles. Because if they're going to the NFC Championship game and then you move forward from there and you go to back-to-back Super Bowls, it would have been really, really difficult to move on from Nick Foles. Now it's easy.
I'll let you chew on this text message. If the Eagles are so bad on the blitz, then fix it. Schwartz obviously is not a complete coach then, or if it is, his players then need to address it. You just mentioned they don't have the personnel. You don't just fix it and say, I'm going to blitz you when you don't,
well,
you just don't have the personnel.
Exactly. You don't get Lawrence Taylor in December. I mean, we've talked about Cre'Von LeBlanc as the perfect example of this, who is Jim Schwartz turned into a meaningful contributor. Everybody in Philadelphia loves Cre'Von LeBlanc. Understand when this season started, Jim Schwartz is down 3 of his starting 4 members of the secondary. Malcolm Jenkins is the only guy left. And people, I don't know. I don't know what they expect. Other teams would have fallen completely apart with those kinds of injuries in the secondary. Schwartz is taking guys off waivers, off the practice squad, and put together a team that not only made the divisional round of the playoffs, they were the only wild card weekend winner to make it a game, and it was against the number 1 seed. Everybody else, Indianapolis, the Chargers, the Cowboys, they all got rolled over. The Eagles had the Saints on the ropes.
Yeah.
And people are complaining about Jim Schwartz. I don't get it.
I told him at the beginning there's a book out there. It's called Football for Dummies. They should read it. John.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the context. That's what I always say. I've been saying it all year. It is hard to play in this league when you don't have any cornerbacks. And Jim Schwartz did an amazing job.
Tomorrow, they've got a plethora of decisions. We'll go over those with John. We talked a little bit about Foles, but what about Brandon Graham, Golden Tate, Darren Sproles, Ronald Darby? You know, we forget Darby's only 24 years old, so we will get into the future of the roster tomorrow with John McMullen right here on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, pal.
Hey, thanks, Mike.